Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin' Around WDW. All right, everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Soarin' Around WDW. I'm here with Dad again, who is helping me co-host this episode, going through Main Street USA and kind of wrapping up our Magic Kingdom Parks of the Present series. So we wanted to start off. I realized when I was going back through last week's episode that we did not rank our attractions in Tomorrowland. So we wanted to start with that and just kind of talk through what our favorite is down through the bottom. There's a total of 8 attractions in Tomorrowland that we talked about last week and the week, or I guess the week before, technically, because we did attractions first in the first half of Tomorrowland. So just starting off with my rankings, my number one ride, this was tough for me because Tomorrowland, as I said previously, is my favorite area of Magic Kingdom, but I did decide to put Tron at number one. I think people will be surprised by that because it is the newest attraction, but it is pretty short. But I just think the concept is very Tomorrowland futuristic. I really like it, so I put that at number one. Number two, I put Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. Number three, the TTA. Number four, Space Mountain. Number five, Astro Orbiter. Number six, Carousel of Progress. And then number seven, the Tomorrowland Speedway. And ending at number eight with Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor. I think the last two for me could go and I wouldn't be sad about it. But the rest of them, I think their ranking could change based off of year and what comes and goes in Tomorrowland. I think Space Mountain used to be a lot higher for me, but with the track's age and now just different coasters that they've done, it's fallen a little bit short lately compared to what it was when I was a lot younger. So where would your rankings fall, Dad, for Tomorrowland?
I'm gonna have to go with Tron. I've only ridden it once, but I was really impressed with it. I thought it was, fantastic. Two, mine they're going to be a little different. I'm going with the TTA for two,
Okay.
Carousel of Progress for three, uh,
Okay.
only because I have fond memories of that from for years, and Walt Disney was very involved in that. And then Space Mountain, and then pretty much the way you finished up, I'd go Astro Orbiter, Tomorrowland Speedway, Monsters Inc. Those are three of them that could almost go away, and I wouldn't even notice it. So
Yeah. I think Astro Orbiter, the only reason it was like before Carousel of Progress for me was because of the views that you get from up there, which doesn't say much about the ride itself, but I do think the
right.
views and at night it's really cool. But otherwise, yeah, the actual ride is not that exciting. So I definitely agree with that too. And then I did also want to shout out Kelsey from the Tropical Wind on Instagram. She wrote in this past week to our comment box just saying that she really wishes that Disney would lean more into the future that never was, like the constellation or the City of Stars that they kind of show at the end of Space Mountain, and not so much intellectual property or IP things, more things like cosmic rays, less IP. And she also said she would definitely vote to keep Carousel of Progress, of course. So thank you, Kelsey, to writing in. It's fun when people write in and share comments, and we love to shout you guys out. So appreciate you taking time to do that. But then moving into Main Street. So as we go to Main Street, there's not a lot of technical attractions here, but there is a lot of history and just hidden gems. I think a lot of people walk in and breeze right through, and people that aren't big Disney fanatics might miss a lot of things that are going on Main Street. And when we did our poll this week for people's favorite section of Disney, this was right up there with actually Fantasyland. So this was above Fantasyland. It was the top rated, I think 115 people voted, and Main Street was number one for people, followed by Fantasyland, then Tomorrowland. So I think just a lot of obviously people that are on our Instagram are Disney fanatics and they love Disney, love the history, but that really surprised me and just kind of speaks to how much you can see through Main Street. But starting with the first attraction, when you walk right into the park, what you see is the Walt Disney World Railroad. And this was an opening day attraction, October 1st, 1971. It is a 3-foot narrow gauge heritage railroad, and it is about 1.5 miles in length and encircles most of the park. There are three different train stations. Obviously, the Main Street station, there's one in Frontierland, and one back in Fantasyland or the old Toontown station. So there's three places you can get on and off. And the Walt Disney World Railroad has become one of the world's most popular steam-powered railroads with about 3.7 million passengers each year. The development of the railroad started in the late 1960s until the park opened in 1971, and it was overseen by Roger E. Brogy, who was the vice president and general manager of Mappo Incorporated, Mappo, Walt Disney Enterprises research and their manufacturing branch. So he had a lot of you know, input into this railroad. It was kind of his baby, his project, and he had previously supervised the building of the Disneyland Railroad in Anaheim, California. So they brought him over to Disney World to do the same. And he had a lot of experience with the railroad, obviously out in Disneyland, and determined that it was better to just use existing steam locomotives rather than building them entirely from scratch, which is the way that Disneyland did it. Their first two locomotives were built from scratch, but that was very expensive and time consuming. So they decided to use existing steam locomotives and redo them for Disney World. So the five locomotives and spare parts were acquired by Roger Brogy and were sent to the Tampa Ship and Repair Dock and Dry Company in Tampa, Florida, to receive their aesthetic and mechanical restorations to become part of the railroad. And at the time, this was the closest facility to Disney World in Bay Lake, Florida, with the space and the equipment that they needed to make this full-side railroad happen. So the restoration of each of the locomotives and their tenders was about $125,000 each, which back then is a lot of money. It's a lot of money today. It was a lot of money then. And for the first few months after the Walt Disney World Railroad opened to the public, Main Street USA at the Magic Kingdom's park entrance was modeled after this Victorian style Saratoga Springs station in New York. And it was initially the only stop for passengers along its route. So you had to go all the way around and get off when the park first opened. But then on May 1st, 1972, the first Frontierland station opened near the Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe. So not even the same place that it is today. And the Frontierland section of the park's western edge, that's kind of where it had stopped before Splash and Big Thunder happened. So it was a lot more inland, I guess you would say, prior to the expansion of Frontierland. And then the third station, which initially was called Mickey's Birthday Station, opened on June 18th, 1988, in the Magic Kingdom Park's brand new Mickey's Birthday Land section at the time, which was adjacent to Fantasyland, used to be Toontown, now is the expansion of New Fantasyland, so to speak, or Storybook Circus. And the railroad was briefly renamed to the Mickey's Birthday Land Express to promote the opening of that area. This also created a new stop for people to get off and was closer to Tomorrowland so people could walk back there. They created that walkway. If you've ever walked, it's kind of behind the Barnstormer, walks now underneath Tron almost, and goes back over to Tomorrowland, which is a nice little walk and a nice cut through area if you're back in that area. And then in November 1990, the original Frontierland station was demolished to make way for Splash Mountain and then was replaced by the current Frontierland station, which opened December 1991, which is situated between Big Thunder and Splash Mountain. It's pretty close. It's like right above where you get on to Splash Mountain. And during the construction of Splash Mountain and the Frontierland station, the railroad was temporarily renamed the Backtrack Express and operated a single train in a shuttle mode along the section of track between Main Street USA and Mickey Starland. So they kind of skipped over the Frontierland section while they were building this new station. And then again in mid 2004, Mickey's Toontown Fair Station was demolished and completely rebuilt. And in February 2011, the Mickey's Toontown Fair section closed for Storybook Circus. So they redid it again there. And August 2018, a billboard sign promoted that Tron Light Cycle Run was coming. And so that was added next to the actual track of the railroad in the Fantasyland section. And towards the end of 2018, they temporarily closed the railroad just to help get some of the construction done for Tron. It was closed until December 23rd, 2022, so for quite a long time. And then it reopened with a new tunnel adjacent to the Tron attraction. So when they were initially working on this railroad line, each Walt Disney World Railroad locomotive consumed about 25 US gallons of fuel and 200 US gallons of water per hour. And each tender held about 664 US gallons of fuel and 1,837 US gallons of water. So a lot of consumption going on there, obviously, each hour that the train is operating. And then the last little piece that I thought was fun, the four trains are named Walter E. Disney, the Lily Bell, Roger E. Brogy, and Roy O. Disney. So it's pretty big testament to Roger Brogy that he was able to have one of the locomotives named after him. So yeah, that's a little bit about the railroad. What do you have to add in there, Dad, or memories about this attraction?
I also thought it was great because there's not a lot of places you can ride real steam trains. Now you can ride trains all over the place, but steam trains getting harder and harder to find anymore in the U.S. And a couple things we all know that Walt Disney was a big train fanatic. He actually had a small train that him and his friends or Imagineers built that went around his house in Holmby Hills, California, right outside of Los Angeles, that you could kind of sit on and ride around in. And so he was really into the train thing. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, Fort Wilderness had a train
Oh, it did.
in the 70s.
Okay.
And they eventually took it out because I guess it was got to be kind of dangerous because kids are riding around their bikes and crossing the tracks, and here comes a train, and
Uh,
it really got a little. It wasn't real fast, but it was a full blown train. Not too long ago, Michaela and I, when we were camping there, we actually went and found some of the railroad ties and saw kind of the old pathway of where the train went all those years ago. Because it closed like in 1979. It
oh,
was only
cool.
open for about 8 years. So yeah, it has a whole history. There's something on YouTube that talks about it. But anyway, back to the Magic Kingdom train. I also thought it was great. I know many times when we'd start our Magic Kingdom adventure there, when you guys were little, we would jump on the train first thing and take it to the back of the park, and
Mm-hmm.
then go like on Splash Mountain and just it's try to beat the crowd. And sometimes it worked actually quite well. We actually beat some of the crowd by taking the train around to the back and anything to save time. So yeah,
Yeah.
we had a lot of fond memories of the train, and we still definitely jump on it from time to time.
Yeah, it's actually Maddie's favorite ride, I think. I don't know that it's if it still is or not, but it always was his favorite. And it's a bummer because oftentimes now at night it doesn't run. And so, or in the evenings it doesn't run. So for after hours events, like even when we were there for Halloween year before last, even though it was still light out, they weren't running the train once they let people in for the party. So it's kind of disappointing they're running it less often. I get it's extremely expensive to run because of how much fuel it takes, like we just talked about. But it is, yeah, it's a really cool ride. I love when you go through Frontierland and you can see into Splash Mountain or now Tiana's as you're pulling out, I guess, as you're pulling out of Frontierland, and going towards the Fantasyland station, and then just all the little neat things that they have on the sides of the train. I haven't been on the section from Fantasyland over through Tomorrowland back to Main Street yet since Tron was redone. So since they made that new tunnel. So I'll have to do that. When we did our challenge run, we rode it same thing from Frontierland to Fantasyland. And so it's been a long time since I've done the full loop, but yeah, we really enjoy it. I think it's a neat ride. There's enough narration to keep it interesting. And it's just a really cool thing that's been there obviously since opening day. And I think Walt Disney's love of trains, like you said, just makes it even better because you know that he had a huge love for that and really wanted that to happen in both parks, which is great. So yeah, it's a great attraction if you get the chance to do it. And then we move on to the Main Street vehicles, which are something that I think a lot of people don't even know, not that they don't know they exist, but they don't realize that they're considered an attraction. Depends who you talk to. We get in this debate a lot with every ride and parkeology people, but technically it moves. It's listed on the map as an attraction, so it does count. There's a couple of different vehicles that come out on Main Street. They usually only run for a couple hours a day because, as you have probably all seen if you've been to Magic Kingdom, it is incredibly crowded, and so it's hard to get these vehicles through safely. So oftentimes they only run from around opening-ish or right after opening through about 10 or 11 a.m. because of that. Now, lately we have seen them out more often. They'll bring them back out through parts of the day, but it kind of depends. Sometimes they come out and the Dapper Dans are on them, or they have some show with them and they're not rideable, but they do have times where they are rideable. And the vehicles that are in service today are the horse-drawn streetcar, the fire engine, the jitney, and the omnibus. And Regan and I just rode the omnibus. I think this was the first time we've ever ridden it. I don't remember, did we ride these as kids, Dad? I do not remember ever getting on these before.
To be brutally honest, we never did once.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so.
We were too busy, racing to probably our first attraction in the morning. I ran right past them, and
Yeah.
uh, we did. Yeah, I personally have never been on in my whole lifetime. I've never taken the time to go on one. So you went on the double decker bus, I assume.
Yeah, we went on the
Yeah.
omnibus and it was really it was cool. I mean, we were in a rush because it was a challenge day and the poor lady was trying to break everybody's strollers down and shove them in there and we sat on the bottom level, but it was cool. It's fine. I don't think I mean, I think it's like a classic thing that they'll have to keep, but I vividly remember in Epcot, the double-decker bus, like the, London kind of bus that used to have characters on it and they would stop and
Right.
all the characters would get off. So I guess in my head I always just assumed they were always for characters, but then I read no, obviously people have been riding them forever, but yeah, it's something that takes a little bit of time. It's something neat to like check off the list of doing once, but it's not something I would do all the time. But it is usually a one-way trip, so it transports you from town square down to the castle almost or back. So you can't stay on. They kind of stop and you just have to look for them and hop on. And they seat probably between 10 to 30 people, depending on which one. The omnibus had fit quite a bunch of people. They will fold up your stroller and put it on there. But honestly, if you have a stroller, it is not worth getting your stroller folded up and shoved under there. You could walk way faster down to the castle, but it is something unique to do. And then, yeah, the vehicles do close, like I said, once it becomes too busy for the most part. There's not really hours listed in the Disney app, so you just have to kind of be on the lookout for them if it's something that you want to do or if you're doing a challenge run. It makes it a little bit tricky, that's for sure. And then we have the Town Square Theater, and this is where you meet Mickey Mouse. So this it used to be a lot of different things. I feel like it's changed a lot over the years, but it the actual Town Square Theater that's there today opened March 30th, 2011. Or I guess technically April 1st, 2011. There was a soft opening on March 30th. But the actual original thing that was there was called the Town Square Exposition Hall, and that was an opening day attraction at Magic Kingdom. Now it's really just character meet and greets. It's Mickey Mouse currently for the actual big celebration a few years ago, the 50th. It was Mickey and Minnie together in their 50th garb, which was nice. And then at Christmas time, often this is where I almost called him Jack Sparrow. Jack Skellington is, and because he has a very long wait. So it is indoors, it's air conditioned, but in there they have a wait time posted outside of it. But otherwise, there's really not much else going on in there anymore, which is disappointing because I thought the exposition hall was really neat. We did talk about this a little bit in our Parks of the Past episode, but we have some really great pictures of sitting in the Mr. Toad car there, all the neat little cutouts and different things that they've saved over the years that used to be in there. But what do you remember about this data and like what it was before they changed it to just like meet and greet spot?
Yeah, I was in the meet and greet. We took Michaela there when she was really little. I remember, I think we have a picture of you sitting in the car with Grandma and Grandpa Joel and my
Yeah.
parents, don't we?
Yep.
In one of
Yep.
the picture spots, I guess. I do remember, I thought there was actually a real theater in there. Isn't there like a little movie theater in there?
There,
Um,
I thought there was before too. Now I'm,
they yeah, they were showing something about Disney World, or maybe it was about Walt Disney. It might have been Walt Disney movie they're showing over at Hollywood Studios now. I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know there's hence the Town Square Theater. I believe there is a theater there. Whether it's still used anymore, I don't know. But I know I've seen some sort of movie about Disney World in that theater at some point. I don't remember when, but I know I was in there at some point. I'll have to
okay.
look that up.
That makes sense, especially like you said with the name. But yeah, I can't recall. I do remember going in there as a kid, not all the time, but often enough that I have memories of like walking in there. I thought I remembered this big picture of like 101 Dalmatians or like a cutout of them or something. I don't know, but I do remember going in there a number of times. And yeah, that picture of Grandma and Grandpa we used as a throwback picture last year, and it's in the Mr. Toad car, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. But yeah, it's very different now. And then the last little thing I wanted to talk about before we jump into the dining is the Harmony Barbershop. So I actually initially forgot to put this on the list. It's not listed as an attraction, but this is one of the hidden gems that we'll kind of talk about here as we get into Main Street. And it's something that a lot of people don't know exists because it's not on the map, which I think is weird. I don't know why it's not on the map, or at least the maps that I was looking at, I did not see it listed, but it is an actual running barbershop. And I was reading on Guide for WDW and Touring Plans, and they wrote that initially it was kind of in the middle of the Emporium gift shop area, and then they removed it quite a long time ago and put it where it is now, which is kind of near the fire station. And that was because the Emporium was exploding. It was popular for everybody to shop there. Obviously, it's the biggest gift shop in Magic Kingdom, and it's huge, long stretch all the way down the left side of Main Street. So they took that out just to give more merchandise space. But the barbershop, yeah, is now near the fire station and the car barn. And it is a fully functioning business where you can actually get a haircut. So a lot of people go there for their kids' first haircut, and it's kind of an old-timey vibe, and they do a lot of like milestone pictures, and people that do the little first haircut package, which is, I mean, very inexpensive. It's $30, which is not bad at all for a haircut, especially these days. And you get actually a keepsake lock of hair, a first haircut certificate, and a commemorative Mickey ear hat. So that's really good for $30. I mean, the hat alone these days would probably cost you most of that. So it's a neat little thing to do. I think mostly it's like little boys who go in there. I know there are some little girls, but then they also do like adult beard trims and things like that. You can make advanced reservations. They are available on the website or the Experience app, and that is recommended. They do have some walk-ins each day, but you're really like picking and choosing if you get there and they don't have it available and you wanted a haircut. It also does have different hours than the rest of Magic Kingdom. It's only open for a limited time, usually like 10 to 5 or something like that. So it's not all day. So you have to take that into consideration as well. But I think it's really neat that they have this. I know a lot of my friends from high school that still live in Florida have taken their kids here for their first haircut, and they have some really cute pictures. But have you ever been in here, Dad, or seen it?
I've stepped in there once. I thought we were going to try and have Regan get his haircut there at one point,
Okay.
but I think it was really busy and we just didn't take the time to do it. Of course, his hair would have been easy to cut because he had that kind of surfer bowl cut haircut when he
Yeah.
was a little kid. Yeah, I always thought it was kind of neat. I never got my haircut there, and again I know we were going to have Regan, but it was just too busy. But I think it's a very popular place.
Yeah, yeah, it's really neat that it still is there and functioning and that they've kept it around for so long. That's really cool. And especially for the price, that the prices aren't insane, that it's like a
Yeah.
reasonable, normal haircut price. So then moving on into the dining. So wanted to talk first about Casey's Corner, which opened May 27th, 1995. So this was not a park opening restaurant. And the actual inside of Casey's Corner is pretty small. They do serve hot dogs, corn dogs, and fries, so very like American baseball type food. But the, I think, hidden gem or not so hidden gem of this is the piano player that sits outside and plays, and they rotate through, again, not all the time, not all day. But it is really neat that they have that kind of live music aspect there. What I also thought was interesting that Disneyland Paris actually had this first. So their Casey's Corner opened April 12th, 1992, which was interesting to me since baseball is such an American thing that Disneyland, for whatever reason, they got it first. But the actual name Casey's comes from the 1888 poem, which Disney made into an animated segment in 1946 called Casey at the Bat. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's very baseball, sportsy themed. The food is whatever. It's a hot dog. I don't know that I've ever like thought it was anything exciting, but it is another good place if you can get there and get a seat to sit for the fireworks or to sit and kind of relax before the fireworks or nighttime parade or whatever starts because it's kind of right there on the corner of Main Street before you head over towards Crystal Palace and Adventureland. We've maybe eaten here once or twice, but it's not somewhere we frequent. But I do remember as kids sitting outside and listening to the piano player sometimes. But what do you remember about this, Dad?
Yeah, I think I know Doreen and I, my wife, got hot dogs there a few times. They were good. They're pricey, but what's not, right? The
Yeah.
food there. But it was good. And I know they expanded that part, this outdoor seating area, what about probably 7, 8 years ago now. They really expanded that. There's a lot more eating area outside there under the umbrellas, which I
Yeah.
thought was a positive. I haven't heard the guy playing the piano. I haven't been there, to Magic Kingdom during regular Magic Kingdom time, other than Halloween parties, the last, few years or so. But does the piano player is he still there playing? Do you know?
Yeah, he is. I think it's less frequent than it was when
Okay,
we were younger. I feel like when we were younger, they weren't all the time, but they were pretty often. And now I don't know if it's just there's so much like between the Dapper Dans and the castle shows and the parades, there's just more going on that it's hard to find a time to do it. But we did see one playing the last time we were there during regular hours, which has also been well, let me think about that. Maybe last year when we were there, year before last, 2023. So yeah, we have seen them out, but not, I don't think it's as often as it used to be, it seems, which
okay,
makes sense because again, it's another paid person that's technically not generating any revenue. So they're
sure.
they're not necessarily keeping them anymore, unfortunately. And then moving to the left, another place that is still considered Main Street, even though I thought this would be more like Adventureland, but I guess it is kind of between the two, is Crystal Palace. And this is an opening day restaurant as well. This was October 1st, 1971. They do serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It is an all you can eat buffet meal, and it runs for breakfast about $52 per adult. For lunch and dinner, it's the same menu, and it's about $62 per adult. The breakfast is a typical Disney breakfast buffet, Mickey waffles, all that. And then lunch and dinner is also a buffet like chicken, mashed potatoes, carved beef, etc. But the actual restaurant was originally a cafeteria when Magic Kingdom first opened, and then in 1996 changed to the buffet style with character dining. The characters there currently and have been for a long time are all the Winnie the Pooh characters. So Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore, Tigger typically are the ones that you see there. And the actual building is really beautiful. It was patterned after the facility that Prince Albert built to honor Queen Victoria. And they do have a Crystal Palace at Tokyo Disneyland, which opened April 15th, 1983. For some reason in my head, I thought this was also at Disneyland, but then I looked it up and it's not. So I don't know what I was thinking or if they have a similar looking building at Disneyland, but the Crystal Palace is unique to Disney World. And we went there a good number of times as kids, especially for breakfast, I feel like. And a prior hack, I don't know that it works so much anymore with the early entry stuff, but it used to be if you didn't have early entry, if you weren't staying at a hotel, you could still eat breakfast there before the park technically opens. And then you got in earlier, got to see the castle with less people around and got to eat and then get into the park right away, which is kind of a neat hack. But now they do check for early entry your hotel reservation as you're going into the line. So that wouldn't necessarily work for you to get in there before people, but it is kind of cool to go there really early. It doesn't take time out of your park day. And I do have a vivid memory of Regan getting sick here as a kid when we were young at Crystal Palace. I won't tell the whole story because he'd probably die of embarrassment, but he was really young. He got sick. It ended up basically multiple outfits later of us giving up on the day and going home. But what do you remember about Crystal Palace itself, or have you eaten there in the last, like, it's been a long time since I've eaten here, probably 15 years.
Yeah, we never really frequented that later. We went as a family quite a few times, I think. I know we did
Yeah.
the breakfast, and I think we tried the dinner menu maybe once, but we were big breakfast people, so we had to do the
Hmm.
breakfast. I thought the food was pretty good. I'm a big breakfast guy, so you can't beat a good breakfast buffet. I think the building's beautiful. Location of it is great where they have it there with all the landscaping and everything. It's really a pretty area. And when you have to wait for your name to be called when you're on your reservation, you can sit out on that real nice porch and just kind of view the castle and people going by. And yeah, it's and again, I haven't been there in years, but when we did go, I thought food was great and the prices weren't too bad and the surroundings were fantastic. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like the price for this compared to Cinderella's Royal Table for basically the same exact but one plate and not buffet is exponentially worth it, especially with characters being present. So
Yeah.
just something to consider. There still are characters here. They are Pooh Bear characters, but it's a pretty good character dining option. We did go again for dinner since Maddie and I have been together, so in the last 15 years, and the dinner was fine, but I definitely like the breakfast better and it's a little cheaper, which is always a positive. That's, always a good thing. The next restaurant on the list is the Plaza Restaurant, which actually opened 2 years after opening day, so October 1st, 1973. And this is the cheapest table service restaurant in Magic Kingdom. It is a sit down, one plate, one meal, but they have pot roast, cheeseburger, turkey club, barbecue pork, and the dessert options. They have this cotton candy cheesecake, they have banana splits, sundaes. It kind of ranges between $10 and $26 with between appetizers, desserts, and your meal. And then it is located right at the end of Main Street on the right-hand side as you're cutting through towards Tomorrowland Terrace, towards Tomorrowland. And a lot of people miss it. So I think it's often a restaurant that people don't even know is there. It's kind of tucked behind the ice cream parlor. And on busy days, it's the last table service restaurant to fill its reservations. On less crowded days, you can usually walk up and just get a table, especially if you're there kind of before noon or after like a later lunch between dinner kind of a thing. And the interior is kind of decorated in this Art Nouveau style. I don't know that we've ever eaten here. Have we eaten here, Dad?
We ate there once, and I
Okay.
think we weren't all that impressed with the food or
Yeah.
the interior was nothing to write home about. I think for a lot of people probably feel the same way. There's other much better options in the Magic Kingdom than that, and yeah, for us it just wasn't our bag. So, but we
Yeah.
did we did eat there once that I remember, but I don't think we ever went back.
Okay, that's what I did not remember. I actually totally forgot about this restaurant until I was going through the list and I was like, oh, is that different than the ice cream parlor? Oh, it's an actual sit-down restaurant. And then I remembered where it was and looked at pictures and thought like, okay, I feel like I've seen this, but yeah, I have no memories of eating there. I think because there's all those umbrella tables outside, I didn't even think about there being a sit-down place inside. So yeah, that was an interesting one to read about. I feel like they could do something else with that space or like redo that
Yeah,
restaurant. It's kind of a
yeah.
wasted space, in my opinion. But sorry for you Plaza lovers out there. And then you do have the Plaza Ice Cream Parlor, which is right in front of that. That's definitely more of our cup of tea. This was an opening day place, October 1st, 1971. And originally it was called Borden's Plaza Ice Cream Parlor, but was renamed in 1993. They do serve sundaes and then just scoops of ice cream. They do ice cream floats there, kind of ranges between $7 and $10. And we did frequent there. I feel like they used to serve Edie's ice cream. Is that right? And
Yeah, yeah,
okay. And
yeah.
they've
Back
kind of
back in the day, probably 20 years ago. I don't know whatever changed over, but yeah, it was Edie's. And it might have been something different when it originally opened. Originally it was Borden's you have
Borden's.
there. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely Edie's at some point.
I remember it being Edie's as a kid and just like being, normal ice cream. We get a scoop of like chocolate chip ice cream or cookie dough ice cream or whatever as we were watching the fireworks. Definitely a great little place to scoot in and stop. And then right next door to that is the Main Street Bakery, which was another place we frequented. And now it is a Starbucks, which is very sad in my opinion. But October 1st, 1971, we did talk about this a little bit in an old versus new in an older episode just like how sad I was. And Regan had like no emotional attachment to the original Main Street Bakery, but I did. So the theme park trader website talked about this and I was reading about it a lot, but it said during the years the location has had a few name changes. So initially was Main Street Bakery and Cookie Shop to the Main Street Bake Shop before finally settling on Main Street Bakery, which is what it's most known as. Sarah Lee the company was the original sponsor. And then Toll House or Nestle took over. And finally, the controversial renovation in 2012 when Starbucks began serving their coffee at the location. So it officially opened as Starbucks on June 18th, 2013. And now they serve a typical Starbucks menu. You can get some unique Disney things there. I don't know. I know people love their Starbucks. I know Regan said Steph stops there. I know Mom stops there. I'm sure Doreen stops there to get their coffee. But Main Street Bakery was such a great place. They had awesome cinnamon rolls, they had awesome cupcakes, and we used to stop there most mornings when you and I would go there, often without Regan or Mom, before they'd kind of, sleep in and then they'd join us later. And we would get our pastries and just kind of sit and look at the castle. And I just have really fond memories of the Main Street Bakery. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Dad?
Yes, I was a little disappointed when the Main Street Bakery changed to Starbucks. Again, I'm not a big coffee drinker. Actually, I don't really drink coffee at all.
Same.
But we did have, you and I both did have some fond memories of swinging by there. First thing, I would get my big, massive cinnamon roll, and you would get the massive uh, cupcake with loaded with frosting. And we'd sit at the tables with the umbrellas right at the end of Main Street and eat that quick breakfast, and then we would go hit the rides, and we did that quite often. So that's probably why I do I miss that. And granted, Starbucks has a lot of good offerings, but there was just something special about the Main Street Bakery and the giant chocolate chip cookies and all the different things that they made back in the day. So I'll always miss it, but uh, times change. So
Yeah, I remember people telling me they still have a cinnamon roll, and I was like, that is not a cinnamon roll. It was like a dinky little, like, not the same. So I guess Gaston's now is the place for the cinnamon roll. It's
yes,
just off the beaten path a little bit compared to Main Street Bakery right there when you walk in. And then the final restaurant on Main Street is Tony's Town Square. And this was also an opening day restaurant, which surprised me. So I guess initially, according to all ears, it was called Town Square Cafe, and the food and beverage offered was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was themed to this elegant Victorian era. Originally, the venue was actually going to be sponsored by a coffee company, but then that group backed out. So then it was sponsored by Oscar Mayer, which was kind of funny, from 1971 to 1981. And a spokesman for the company, Little Oscar, which was actually George Molchen, he would go out in his white chef hat and would greet the guests and hand them out the iconic little wiener whistles to the children. But they actually didn't serve hot dogs there. They actually had more of like an upscale fare, which was Monte Cristo sandwiches, crepes, jambalaya, like all these different things. And at the time, they actually served both Coke and Pepsi, which I thought was very interesting prior to Coke becoming the dominating drink option at Disney as it is today. And when Oscar Mayer decided not to renew in 1981, then Hormel took over and the menu was changed to this big newspaper entitled the Tony Town Square Times, with the first page was devoted to actually the history of Hormel. And they still sold the Monte Cristo sandwiches. They also had this like deli plate catfish. So again, still a little more upscale. But they stopped sponsoring in 1989. And then Disney decided to do this huge rehab of the restaurant, making it into what it is today, the Tony's Town Square restaurant. The restaurant is really, if you've never been in it, it's kind of Lady and the Tramp Italian themed. It has the two, classic Italian fare with the meatballs and spaghetti. And I don't know if it still does, but back in the day, it used to have Lady and the Tramp playing on a little TV in the lobby. I'm not sure if that's still the case or not. There is a fountain of Lady and the Tramp. For when you go in the restaurant as well. We ate here a couple of times. It was a neat place to eat, like if you knew the parade was going to be coming around that time, because you could kind of see everything from the windows if you had a window seat there. I thought the food was fine. I actually like Mama Melrose for Italian better over at Hollywood Studios. But what do you remember about this, Dad?
we did eat there a few times. I never liked the food. I thought the food was almost terrible. Um, I would Mama Melrose definitely hands down for Italian. I like that much better, but And I remember reading reviews of Tony's Town Square over the past 20 years. And for the longest time, people would complain about how bad the food was.
Yeah.
So and all this history, I never really looked up any history of Tony's Town Square. And to hear all the history about it, how it was all these different um, names of the restaurant, Oscar Mayer and so forth. I found that very interesting. I had no idea. I thought it was always Tony's Town Square, but looks like it had a couple different reincarnations over the years. But yeah, I never
Yeah.
cared for the food. Location's great. And the fact that you can sit out on the balcony, I think they have some chairs out there. You can sit out there if you wanted to watch the parade. Another good place to watch a parade because you're out of the sun. But yeah, I was definitely not a fan, and I don't know if I'll ever go back there.
Yeah, it's funny. Regan and Steph just ate there maybe a couple weeks ago, and they were not impressed either. And Regan didn't really remember when we went as kids. He knew we had gone, but couldn't remember it. And he loves Italian food, and he was very disappointed still. So, and that was just, a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I agree. I've never really heard strong opinions about it. It's never been anywhere that I'm super interested to go back to, but it still is there. So I wish that they would take the menu and the ingredients and everything from Mama Melrose now that that's going to be going away and bring it over there because I really do enjoy Mama Melrose. But yeah, not the biggest fan of this at all. And then another couple of things worth mentioning on Main Street. So one place that is always fun to go into is the Confectionery, which is a candy shop that's right on the corner on the right-hand side as you're walking down the main strip there. And it just has different neat little, candy unique to Disney as well as popcorn that you can kind of customize. A lot of people talk about that. I'm not super into sweet popcorn, but they do have that you can add like M&Ms or different things into it and make like your own mix, and people really enjoy that. But I used to really like the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and although this is not that, they had really neat like at the top and the roof of the confectionery little things kind of moving around and acting like they were bringing candy from one section to another. It smells amazing in there. They have fresh like cotton candy and different chocolate and stuff that they make right there. So it also reminds me a little bit of like Mackinac Island and the fudge shops and stuff, how they just make everything right in front of you, which is cool. But a lot of it is just like Goofy Co. candy, rock candy, suckers, stuff like that. So that is a place that, we occasionally stop by. It's been a little bit, it's pricey, obviously, for candy, but it's something cool. Have you been in there recently?
I think at the Halloween party a couple years ago, we went through there. I never really spent money there. My candy was the stuff you'd find at 7-Eleven. You know,
Yeah.
the old stamp of the Milky Ways and the Hershey bars and all that sort of stuff. So I've never, not that I wouldn't like it, I just never was a big fan of the confectionery. Yeah, I know. Again, I've been in it a few times, but you'd probably walk out typically with cotton candy if I remember right.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Um, so I was like, yeah, I was like your cotton candy. But yeah, and one thing also about the stores, I know you'll get into the Emporium in a minute. The best thing about the stores on the Emporium side, which is across the street, is when there's a parade or it's really busy, what do? You cut through the stores
Yes.
all
Oh
the way
yes.
down. And you can kind of get around the crowds really fast that way. We did that, I don't know how many times. I thought that was kind of fun to do. And another store I thought was great is the glass blower. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
The person that blows glass. I don't know the name of the store. I should. We've watched that the person do that a number of times. We thought that was cool. One last thing I'll just note because it's a real fond memory for me. This is kind of a history thing, but on the somewhere along where the Emporium is, about halfway down, there used to be a magic shop,
Uh-huh. Yep.
and I bought a rubber Frankenstein mask there in 1973. And we drove down from Michigan, and then we drove back. And I put that stupid Frankenstein mask on, driving in our station wagon when we were all these traffic jams, working our way up I-75, waving to people, and people are just laughing. And I was just trying to entertain myself, my sisters, and the people in the cars that were right next to us wearing this Frankenstein mask. I had that Frankenstein mask for years until I think I just kind of rotted away in the garage closet a long time ago. But yeah, that's something I remember going to that magic shop and I got it for five. It was a $5 Frankenstein mask, and $5, and in 1973 wasn't really chump change. I guess it'd probably be 25 or 30 today. But yeah, that's a fond memory I have of Main Street back in the day.
Yeah, that's I feel like Main Street obviously is like great shopping. It's very the Emporium itself, it's the largest shopping venue at Walt Disney World in well, in Magic Kingdom, I guess I should say. And I feel like outside of World of Disney, it's probably the second largest Disney shop if you count it all, the whole strip as a shop. It's got all kinds of stuff in there from clothing to games to toys to stuffed animals, like pretty much anything you want to find, you probably can find in there, and they rotate through things out seasonally. And so there's always stuff changing. If you want it, you better get it because it might not be there the next time you go back. And they just change stuff out constantly. But it does offer a lot of different like collectible pins, houseware items as well. And there are like the cheapest things in there are probably pens that you can get or like little notepads. And then they also have things that are like hundreds of dollars. So you can spend a lot of money in there quickly. I know they sell like the Dooney and Bourke expensive stuff in the Emporium section along the way. They do also have, just like as an FYI, some band-aids, like medication, stuff like that, if you need it behind the counter, and then sunscreen as well. And it was an opening day shop. So it has been there since the very beginning. They did do the significant expansion in 2001 where they kind of rethemed stuff and made it a little bit bigger or deeper, but it has been there since the beginning, which is really cool. So, yeah, if you have time or you should make time on your way out after the fireworks, wait back a little bit and just kind of shop through those shops. It's a neat place to kind of stop. And then I did just want to talk about a couple of little secrets, quote unquote, that I saw when I was researching Main Street. So, one thing are the flags on Main Street. So, there's only one real flag that flies on Main Street, and that's that central flagpole, the giant flag in the town square. But the actual flags that sit above the buildings in Main Street are fake. And what they mean by fake is that each flag is actually missing either a star or a stripe. And so, since there is this American flag code of conduct, all authentic American flags are expected to be raised, lowered when instructed. But because they're not real, they don't have to be. So that's why Disney did it because it would be too much to know, are they all at half mast or all at full mast or whatever. So they also double as lightning rods to help keep guests below safe. So they kind of attract the lightning, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, the only real American flag on Main Street is that main flagpole. And that one does get raised and lowered and things like that. But then also the street lamps on Main Street transition from gas to electric. So as you start back towards the entrance, they are more gas lamps, and then they change to the electric style, which kind of represents this evolving of the times, so to speak. Also, something that I did not know was that Main Street is on a slope that angles up just slightly enough so you're walking uphill into the park and downhill out of the park. And again, it's not very much, but it's enough that helps, I guess, designed to help when people are trying to leave, makes them exit a little quicker because you're kind of moving on this downhill pace. Strollers are kind of moving downhill. So I thought that was interesting. And then the opening day speech, when you walk into the Main Street station or the railroad station, they actually are playing Morse code. And the Morse code is actually Walt Disney's speech from Disneyland's opening day translated, that kind of talk about to all who come to this happy place, welcome, which is such a unique thing that is just thrown in there, just a special little thing. The last thing that I was reading about was Fire Station 71 was actually named because of the opening in 1971. So that's why it's called that. There's obviously not 71 fire stations within, Disney property and stuff, but it was called Fire Station 71 because of the year. So yeah, a lot of little hidden magical things. There's also, as you're walking through Main Street, on each window, you'll see names of all the people who were responsible for building the park. So they kind of also talk about some fake corporations used by Disney when they were purchasing the land to kind of keep it undercover so people didn't know it was Walt Disney. So it's really neat that they do these little things just to make it a little more special, and unique compared to other theme parks where you just walk in and it's nothing.
Something I wanted to add on Main Street that I remember was, I believe, a store called the Chapeau, and it was right next to the confectionery to the right. It would cut through to the confectionery inside also, but it had a place where you get your Mickey ears and you could get your name embroidered on the back or for your kids or and they had Goofy hats and Pluto hats and all these other things there too. But is that still around or did they move that?
So that is now the chapeau is actually closed. So I know this because when we were pregnant with Blake, we wanted to use that as our announcement and take pictures in front of the castle with her name. And we went not knowing it was closed. And so we went to look for it and we're like, where did the chapeau go? And it was gone. And now they sell those hats in the actually like town square theater area. It's kind of on the right hand side of when you're looking at the steps to walk in to go meet Mickey. It's over to the right, and it's just
Okay.
called like headwear and embroidery, like part of Box Office Gifts, which is the little gift shop in the town square theater. It's
Okay.
much smaller. So that is a bummer, but it does say that it has the same amount of merchandise. I thought it was way smaller. They did not have any of the classic Mickey ears when we were there. They said they were sold out and had been for a while, hadn't gotten new stock. And so I was so disappointed because that was kind of the idea we had. So we had to come up with something else real quick and ended up doing like pink balloon for our gender reveal and just posting the name. But I really wanted to get the girls' hats and they didn't have them there anymore. So actually, my kids do not have Mickey ear hats yet. I don't know if we're going to do that at Disneyland or what we're going to do, but yeah, that it is no longer there, which is such a bummer.
And when I was a kid, I was probably Eileen's age, 5. My grandpa Jola, your great grandpa Jola, when he was out in California at Disneyland, so this would have been like 1965, he sent me a hat. It was a Donald Duck hat with Johnny written on the back of
Oh,
it
really?
from Disneyland. I don't know whatever happened to it. I wish I still had it because
Oh,
it would be pretty
yeah.
cool. But yeah, I remember having that, and my sisters used to tease me wearing this Donald Duck hat around the house.
Oh, that is
But
so
yeah,
funny.
that was right back when, and Walt probably at the time was probably still alive, which is really cool. So
Wow. Yeah, that is really cool. Cool. Yeah. So no more chapeau, unfortunately. You still can get the hats. You can get them embroidered. I think you can also get them done at Disney Springs. I'd have to verify that, but I do think
I
they
would
have an
think so.
embroidery area there.
Yeah.
So that's something you could do as well. But yeah, the chapeau is no more, unfortunately. Anything else about Main Street Dad or anything with Magic Kingdom wrap up?
Yeah, Main Street, another thing that I always thought was really cool, the way they designed it is when you enter under the train station, there's the two tunnels you can go in and out, of course, but they put them offset so you can't see the castle until you walk through and then go out to what I call the first hub, and then onto Main Street. You get to the center of Main Street, then you can see the castle. They did that intentionally, so you wouldn't walk through. Oh, there's a castle. You wouldn't even see it until you get out there into the middle of Main Street. Then you can see the castle. That's why those two train station tunnels are offset far far out from the castle, so you can't see it. They did that intentionally, which I thought was pretty cool. And the posters that are in the tunnels, I think I had almost all of them at one point. I still have them here in my closet somewhere. The big posters
Yeah.
advertising the attractions. I also thought that was super cool. That's when I started collecting them. And you probably remember back in the old house, I had many of them on a wall in our den that I was collecting. So yeah, I think I still have all of them somewhere. So
Do
I
they
thought that was
sell
pretty
them?
cool.
They used to sell them like off to the left. Was there a shop that sold them, or where did we get
Yes.
those?
Yeah, and I did pick them up over at Epcot,
Yes,
right
that's
across
right.
from Spaceship Earth. There was a Art of Disney stores, right? That's
Yep.
where I typically would get them. And I have the full size ones where now I don't think you can buy them full size anymore. They're much smaller. So
Yeah, we have little mini versions of some of the ride posters in our playroom that we just got off of Etsy, which I think like back then that wasn't really a thing. So, but now,
right.
yeah, we just like get some little knockoff ones off at Etsy and got them printed and have them hanging in the playroom. But that's a little bit about Main Street. And then we wanted to move into our old versus new for today. So the old versus new, so basically the classic castle versus the updated castle. And I think we have both the same opinion about this, but do you prefer the old castle or the castle with the pinkish tint?
I'm an old school guy. It's always the old castle, and even though they did add some pretty cool new turrets and stuff out further away from the castle, which I
Yeah.
think some of them actually are tied into doing like I think one of them has like a sound operators that do for the stage shows and stuff. They sit up there.
Yeah.
You kind of look at all this stuff and go, what are they doing up there, and kind of figure that stuff out. But I always like the older castle better,
Yeah.
the bluish gray castle.
I agree. Yep. I think yeah, they've made some cool updates and some of the stuff that they've done for celebrations are fine if they get taken down, but I did not love when they painted the castle. We did talk about this a little bit last week, so I would also pick the old school castle for sure. And then for our quiz today, our quiz question, so coming up with the Magic Kingdom, the last Magic Kingdom question for this time. So the question that I saw that I was like, oh, I don't know the answer to this, so this will be interesting, is you probably will know this. The lead singing bust in the Haunted Mansion shares the voice with another famous character. Who is this character? Is it Yogi Bear, Goofy, Boris from Rocky and Bullwinkle, or Tony the Tiger? And we did talk about some of this when we were talking about Haunted Mansion, but now I can't remember. And maybe we weren't even talking about the bust. But do you know what the answer is?
Yes, his name is Thurl Ravenscroft, and it's the voice of Tony the Tiger.
Okay, let's go to. Yes, that's right. Yep. So, that is right. So Paul Frees, who's the ghost host, is also the villain Boris from the cartoon. Maybe that's what we were talking about because I was like Rocky. Something triggered my brain about Rocky. And then Eleanor Audrey was the voice of Madame Leota. She's also the voice of the evil stepmother in Cinderella and Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, which I did not know that. So that's yeah, that's really cool. So Tony the Tiger is the answer, is also the singing bust in Haunted Mansion. All right, so to wrap up our Magic Kingdom Parks of the Present series, we had a poll up on Instagram that basically asked, what did y'all want to see? Did you want to know all the attractions top to bottom? Did you want to know top five, bottom five? Did you want to know our itinerary for the day? And y'all voted for top five and bottom five attractions. And so we are going to bring on a special guest to do that with us tonight. So we will bring him on now.
I'm back.
Uh-oh, guess who's back? It's Regan. So
It's
Regan is
Reagan! Yay!
hopping on
Yay.
today just to do a quick top five, bottom five for Magic Kingdom and kind of talk through anything super helpful for that park. So I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
start with my top five, bottom five, and then I'll let Regan Dad both go.
Okay.
My top five attractions, I guess in this order, I don't know if they're in a particular order. It was hard for me to choose, but my top attractions are Big Thunder, Pirates of the Caribbean, Tron, Pooh, and Mine Train. So those are my top five. Reeg, what are your top five attractions?
Oh, I forgot about poo.
Yeah, I
Poo.
know. Good one.
Okay. So I did so Tron this is in order for me.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna put poo because I did forget about it, which means it can't be that. But I do love that ride. Tron is number one for me. Big Thunder number two. Pirates number three. Tiana's number four. Not because it's Tiana's, but just the track of Splash Mountain.
Okay.
The amount of ride you get for the wait is good. And then I put TTA slash carpets at night.
Oh, really? Okay. Carpets at night.
Carpets
Okay.
at night specifically, but TTA anytime. So like if that's more fair.
Okay. So TTA kind of really is your fifth.
Yeah.
All right, Dad, what are your five?
Clearly, Haunted Mansion, Pirates, Big Thunder, Tron, and People Mover.
Okay. All right. So you guys are like similar-ish. Yeah, yeah, Haunted Mansion was close up there for me. That was like I was struggling on what to put there. And then same with Tiana's. Like I struggle with that because I love Splash so much. I still like Tiana's. It's still the same track. It's still a good ride. But yeah, it's rough. So my bottom five, which I guess Regan will, I don't know. I was surprised you picked Carpet that night. Bottom five, Barnstormer, Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, Tomorrowland Speedway, Magic Carpets of Aladdin, and Tom Sawyer Island. So those are my bottom five. I'd be fine to see any of those go. Don't need to see them again. That's my bottom for the park. What about you, Regan?
So I didn't put any shows because otherwise it would be basically just any show.
Okay.
Um, so like my bottom, as many shows as there are, that's my bottom.
Okay. Okay.
Because I don't like any of the shows in Magic Kingdom. So my bottom five, this is not really in any particular order,
Okay.
but the Riverboat,
Oof. Hitting them
uh,
hard in the first one.
Small World,
Okay. That probably could have been on there for me.
the Speedway, Tomorrowland Speedway, Barnstormer, and it hurts me to say it, but Space Mountain.
Oh, really? A hot take.
It sucks now.
Yeah,
It's
it
so bad.
hurts.
They just need to redo the track. If they redid the track and it felt better, I'd like it more. But it just isn't enjoyable right now. Like it's too rough. It's like getting to Matterhorn level.
Yeah,
Like,
it used to be one of my favorites. It definitely used to be in
yeah,
my top
same.
five, if not, but now it's just, it hurts. When you go on Tron and then you go on that, it's just like,
Yes.
whoa,
Or
what a
Guardians
difference.
in that. Like Guardians is like butter in comparison to that ride.
Yeah.
So, no, space is definitely down there for me. I hope that when they're done refurbing Big Thunder and then they get Cars Land open, that they'll shut down space and like do some work in there like they're doing for Big Thunder. Because Big Thunder doesn't even need it that bad. And they're doing like the whole
Yeah,
trend.
I
So
know. Yeah, that
yeah.
surprised me. Okay, Dad,
Anyway,
what about
that
you? Bottom five.
Of course, you guys picked Tom Sawyer Island and the riverboat. You're going to get your wish because that's going
I
away.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's good. I picked Barnstormer, Laugh Floor, Aladdin, Day or Night.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Definitely the Speedway.
Yeah.
And I had the Tiki Room, but then you guys brought up, what was your last one that?
Space.
No, I always kind of like space. That's kind of somewhere in the middle. There's another one that you picked. I'm trying to think of it.
Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, you said.
Yeah, Monsters Laugh
The
Lord
Riverboat?
Riverboat. Yeah, that's going to go away, and I'm okay with that. But I'm just going to go with the Tiki Room. I know it's one of Walt's original attractions, and I like it. And I could see it probably like every 10 years, and I'd be good.
That's a long
So
time.
exactly my point. So yeah, those are my five.
Okay. And then Regan, while we have your attention, any Magic Kingdom tips, tricks, advice that you have for people going for the first time or for their 100th time? What are your
Well,
top
nothing
Magic
super
Kingdom?
interesting. I just saw a tweet that All Ears put out. I don't know if you saw this, Olivia, but it was a meme of like people who say they're going to do everything in Magic Kingdom in one day, and then it's like Zendaya facing the camera like Disney pros, like they know it's impossible.
Oh,
And I'm like,
interesting.
yeah, and I'm like, not only is it possible, it's like easy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, especially in
like
the Lightning Lane multipass era.
that's how like that's how Dad and I did that in 2015, and
Yeah,
it was easy that we were done before dinner, and we did that was like every attraction, not just every ride. That was everything. And
yeah,
so like it can't be that much harder now, especially when you pay your way because you can do
right.
both single pass rides and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still think it is the only park that exists unless you're a drinker. I think it's the only park that exists that you can do an entire day at from start to finish, like open to close,
Oh, really?
and fill your time. I think it's the only park that you can do that with. Maybe
Interesting.
Hollywood, maybe Hollywood.
Yeah, I
But
guess it
like there's
depends what you want to do.
right, but I'm saying there's enough at Magic Kingdom where you could easily fill a day from open to close. There's
Yeah.
26 rides, and so even if you don't know the systems and the intricacies of Lightning Lane Multipass, like you can fill your day at Magic Kingdom really easily. Get there super early if you're not parking at the Contemporary or at a resort that's around the lagoon. If you want a rope drop, or take buses. Buses from other hotels get there before the monorail starts going. And
Oh,
so if you're
yeah.
trying to rope drop, if you're rope dropping and you're only doing Magic Kingdom that day and you're not hopping, I think taking a bus from your resort will get you there faster than parking at the parking lot and doing the monorail, which makes rope dropping a lot easier. Because if you don't rope drop successfully, like if you're not in that initial, if you don't show up before they open the turnstiles, don't rope drop Mine Train. At least as of recording this, when Tron is still not early entry,
Yeah.
you'll end up waiting like 45 minutes and waste your entire rope drop. Always see Happily Ever After unless you're doing every ride. Oh, Take the resort monorail after
Yeah,
after
I feel like that
after
used to be a
halfway
hack,
there.
and now it's not as much of a hack. Like too many people know about it. But so yeah, you
Yeah,
can if you listen to this.
I kind of agree. We stayed about 10 minutes after Happily Ever After to shop a couple weeks ago, and in that 10 minutes, a line had formed for the resort monorail. So I think it's
Yeah.
definitely less of a hack now. I wish they would take it off the stops list
Yeah, it says
at
right
the
on
Ticket
there. I mean, it's
Transportation
not that
Center.
much of a secret.
I know, no, yeah, and that's why I don't feel bad saying is because it does say that it stops at the Ticket and Transportation Center. But yeah, so resort monorail. If you're not pressed for time, take the ferry back to the parking lot at night. It's really, really nice to like watch the castle fade away at night. We just did that with the trainers when I went last weekend, and that was really cool. I guess take your time and enjoy Magic Kingdom if you're only doing that part. There's so much to see and so much to do, and we're so used to now just running around and not really looking at anything. And so when I went with a bunch of people that had never been a couple weeks ago, like to Disney ever in their lives, it was really really fun to see what they were seeing through their like perspective. So if you're going
Yeah.
for your first time, take your time.
Yeah, I had someone who is going for Make-A-Wish, and they asked me because Magic Kingdom is not as IP heavy, obviously, as other parks. It's one of the,
Right.
there's a lot more original rides. And they're like, well, we looked at the list in Magic Kingdom. We don't even know what half of it is. I'm like, that's okay. That's the magic of it. Like, some of it is just like
That's
that
not
it's
true.
original. But I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, well, we know Star Wars, we know Toy Story, but like, we don't know anything about, or like Avatar, but we don't know most of the things at Magic Kingdom besides the princesses. And if we're not into princesses, should we skip it? And I was like, absolutely not. No,
Oh,
it's
skip it. It's crazy.
yeah, skip it is a no. Skip it is a no. But Dad, any like big advice or any last things for Magic Kingdom?
No, I just remember when you guys were young, jumping on the resort monorail, where we thought we were so sneaky,
Yeah.
uh, and granted, back then it was everyone's like
Yeah.
taking, their line was 10 times longer, and we would
Oh
just
yeah.
go walk it up, get on that, and go.
Mm-hmm.
Most people just think it's going to the resorts, it's not going to the parking lot, and it was just a great hack, and we did that all the time. But no, everything Regan had to say is true. Taking the bus over, we've done that a few times too. If you can eliminate the monorail and the ferry boat, the bus just zips you around and can get you there earlier. And if that's an option, that's a good way to go too. But I don't have really anything else to add.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks guys for joining us for the Parks of the Present Magic Kingdom. It ended up being a lot more parts than I initially thought, but as we were talking about things, I was like, wow, this is a lot more to talk about than I had imagined. There's just a lot of history and cool things at Magic Kingdom in particular, but as we go through all the parks, there's a lot of just really neat little things that, like Regan said, we run around so much that we forget about or we just don't know because we're so busy hopping from ride to ride and trying to get stuff done. But thanks, Regan, for joining us for this brief little recap. And thanks again to
Yeah.
Dad for co-hosting the series. And we hope that y'all have a good rest of your night. Thanks for listening. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.